All right, welcome everyone to this action meeting of the Michigan State team. We have a guest speaker today. His name is Jason Sattler. Jason Sattler used to be a little Twitter famous back when that was a thing. He launched his LOL GOP account when he moved from California to Michigan in 2009. Over the past decade, he was a national columnist for USA Today and a braying voice for Democratic renewal in a state that has gone from being one of the most gerrymandered in the nation to a model for what's possible under progressive governments. He produces the Ball of Thread podcast with Marcy Wheeler, a top 2% podcast that tells how America has been brought to the brink of fascism. In 2024, he launched earlyworm to help save democracy by connecting the news to daily actions anyone can take or at least share. So please give a warm international welcome to Jason Sattler, and remember to mute your microphones if you're not speaking. Jason, it's all yours.
Thank you. And this is really honored to do this. I really admire the work that you're doing. And I'm so glad to hear the excitement that you are expressing from people around you, because, we can feel it here. I'm in Ann Arbor. I'm in the heart of North Campus. And kind of the most exciting thing about my daily walk is going out and seeing a new lawn sign every day for Harris Walz, pretty much. And so we are very excited, and you just hope that Ann Arbor reflects the world, because often we don't. But I think I want to talk today about going down ballot. I'm sure that if you take the time to vote when you're abroad, you take the time to vote all the way down ballot. I'm going to also talk about being strategic and trying to win down ballot. And I think the lesson of Michigan, the lesson that we have for the nation, is really a down ballot for democracy message. So I hope it fits what you guys are interested in. And it's what I feel comfortable talking about, because it's what I've spent the last year doing. Start off by blaming my old AP government teacher, Mr. Burke. He was just a wonderful guy to have as your AP government introduction to what politics and government could be. He was a local badass. He's one of those people that tried to primary Jimmy Carter. Maybe that wasn't the smartest move, but he was that kind of guy. And he had the crazy idea of giving people extra credit if they volunteered in a campaign. And a friend of mine and I had the same exact idea, which was to actually run for office. He decided he was going to be the candidate. I decided I'd be the campaign manager. We did this twice. And the second time around, my friend actually won a primary. He was the Democratic nominee for an assembly race in Southern California, just the north valley there, which may seem like it might be Democrat, but the truth was it really was a Republican gerrymandered district. It's where they stuck a lot of Republicans around the LA area back then. And I learned two lessons by being in that one campaign. One is that demographics in general will doom you. You can't overcome a gerrymander 96, 7, 8% of the time. I think that's the statistic I've heard once. This was a Republican district for decades. It was made to be a Republican district. Defeating this is why they let a 19-year-old win a primary, because it wasn't a winnable district. But when you win a primary, they do kind of look at you and say, hey, you could actually win an election. So they introduce you to the labor union. They drive you to a phone and they say, okay, get busy. Start calling. So we sat there for 2 or 3 days and raised no money by calling people, because my voice hadn't changed yet. Still hasn't quite changed. It didn't help to be on the phone and asking for donations. And it was just asking them for money when everyone was predicting that we would lose. It was kind of a miserable proposition, and it sucked. And it's something that will drive people out of politics. It's something when I look at politicians, I have a lot of respect for them, because I know they're doing some pretty humiliating stuff to stay. If it is for the power, they're paying for it. So I quit the campaign and went back to UCSB. And 15 years later, as Sarah talked about in the bio that I had her read about me, I moved to Michigan, probably in the worst time you could move to Michigan, at least in this century. It was 2009. You guys, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But, the thing that really surprised me is I moved into the middle of a targeted area by red map. And that ended up being hugely consequential in I'd say American history. They really saw an advantage, and Democrats completely missed it, to redistrict and to gerrymander Democrats out of power for a decade based on one bad election in 2010. It's a Karl Rove project, and that's why he still will always work forever in the party, even though he pretends to hate Trump. Jeff Timmer, you may know, he was a big time Republican in one of the guys I disliked very much when I first got here, helped do this gerrymander, since has become one of these never Trumpers, Lincoln Project guy. And he blames the gerrymander itself in these key states for creating Trumpism, because it encouraged this kind of ridiculousness that you still see in primaries, especially like if you look at in Arizona and we see in Michigan, where you have to out ridiculous each other to win a primary. That's how you got a guy like Mark Robinson being the nominee. In Georgia. It happened independently of MAGA, and it happened perfectly for MAGA. You know the result of this. This wasn't without consequence. The power that was deprived of people had serious consequences. We saw in Michigan to a degree that no one ever should. And then things get worse. We actually, 11,000 of us. And I think that's probably 11,000 people in my county who voted for Jill Stein. Probably cost us the election. You could look at it a variety of ways, but the turnout in Wayne County was there was a lot of reasons why Donald Trump won in 2016, and none of them were good. And then everyone's favorite picture, 2018, everything kind of comes back and we have a very good year, and then an even better year in 2020 when we took the trifecta. I mean, that was 2022. I'm sorry, for the first time 4 decades, 1984. So you hear Reagan Democrats, that famously happened in Macomb in 1984, and that's the last time we had the state senate here in Michigan. And how did it happen? I think we all kind of know. It went from how did we go from this Tea Party wave to this gerrymandering to this nightmare to having some of the best statewide candidates, one of the best governors in the country, just this incredible bench where like you just wonder who's going to keep running because there's so many good candidates. There's a problem that didn't exist 10 years ago, and a trifecta. And how did this happen? Just to kind of, I started just making this list just because I was kind of a little blown away. The things that we've won by putting in the hard work that you guys are putting in are tremendous. Just if you stopped at free breakfast and lunch for all students, I used to teach high school, the misery that alleviates, and the social pressure that takes away from these poor kids who seem special because they were getting this free lunch I just love this thing. And, this is a big Tim Walz thing. This is a big Gretchen Whitmer thing. But beyond the list, going beyond what voters did when we, banned abortion bans. We got rid of, it reminds you of how terrible things were just this brief time ago. You had to have rape insurance in Michigan in case you wanted to have an abortion and have your actual insurance cover it. That was immediately repealed in the RHA. Right to work on, that almost never happens in American history. It's happened very few times. Lead protection, expanded pre-K. We banned child marriage because why not? And then you go down the ballot, this year, not as many success stories, but if you look at the ballot, the budget this year, there's a bunch of just smaller reforms like to help poor defendants, because over a decade and when you have a GOP Senate for decades, you don't do things like fund public defenders. So this is this incredible victory. Okay. So how did this happen? These 4 steps: ending gerrymandering, voters did that 2018, expanding voter rights, that started in 2018, kept going. The trifecta added more to that. Now same day registration keeps getting better and better. Good candidates, that just was luck, and good primaries, and then down ballot dedication. This is what I've focused. This is what I spent the last year fixated on, and inspired a lot of ways by one of the groups that we'll be talking about today. The States Project kind of really inspired me, the Give Smart program, and I think it's inspirational to anyone who gets involved with it. This is what I focus on, because you can't control the other 3, especially if you're in a state that isn't like Michigan, where you can't end a gerrymander with a ballot vote. You need the gerrymandered legislature to somehow end that, and that just doesn't ever really happen. And there's another thing that kind of drove me is I spent most of my life on Twitter, or now I spend it on Blue Sky or Threads. And you see that these candidates who have recognized that you can be really good at social media and not very good at winning elections, or you can be a really inspirational candidate in a race that is just not winnable, or you can be in a state where you're running against a really good politician who knows her state much better than we do. Unfortunately, that would be Susan Collins. A lot of money gets wasted, and you see over and over the statistic is that a typical, this is the statistic that changed my mind about everything. Costs about 3%. A state legislative race costs about 3% of what a typical federal race in the same area costs. And you look at the money that was lost, or money that was spent, and almost all of that went to, I would say the majority of that went to consultants, to lose to Marjorie Taylor Greene by 31 points. If you simply put any name on the ballot, it would have been about 31. You might have even done better if you hadn't kind of had to run an actual campaign by actually challenging her. It's just a tremendous waste of money. And we just thought we can't do this again. How are we still doing this again in 2022? Um, one of the things that I've come across from interviewing Jennifer Mercia, she's um, a rhetoric scholar, a professor at UT, and she does a lot of talking about democracy. She's a big democracy fan. And then she's also a big news junkie. And then she's also someone who recognizes that us news junkies, if you're here, you're probably an early worm, or I call you, or a news junkie. We are focused obsessively on the news. And of us, we are the subset of people who, about a third of people pay for subscriptions for news in America. We are the ones who actually pay and read. And we probably have several. And we're unusual. And we don't kind of get how unusual. 80 to 85% of America isn't us. And we help make the news, not you particularly. I'm not trying to incriminate anyone, but I'm just saying this kind of fixation on the news, like it's a soap opera, like it's sports, makes it more polarized, insular, and emotional. And it's paying service to those of us who know what's going on, who then feel like we need to keep up with what she is saying. And it creates this feeling of being angry and powerless. And that results in a lot of people wanting to do good. And when there's an opportunity, we see what happens. I mean, $81 million in 24 hours is still a bit staggering. This was, if you remember back to the 2007 campaign when Obama shocked everyone, it was like 74 million in a month. If I remember that, they're doing that in 24 hours now. And this is part of what has changed since I tried to run a campaign, obviously in 1994, is this digital fundraising through the digital aspect through messaging and fundraising has transformed politics in a way that I think could be really, really good. Because for about a decade after, for the last decade, I meant to say much longer than that. For decades, Republicans have obsessed on down ballot races, and they've used abortion rights as a big way to polarize the entire country. This has created negative partisanship. This has led to them dominating state legislative races over and over. They put not that much money, but consistently more money than Democrats. And you'll notice that's even happening this year when all this money is being spent. Democrats are outspending Republicans everywhere, except for in state legislative races. Since this story came out, this was earlier this month, that has changed. A lot of people have stepped up. But just the fact that we got this far into this race and Republicans are still outspending Democrats on a state legislative level is ridiculous. We know how much can be won with how little money compared to you spend on one TV ad. You can probably end up spending, you could flip several seats, maybe even a whole state legislature. And it takes time to do that. And I'll explain that once, we'll get more in a little bit in a second. But a lot of times when I start talking about why we shouldn't spend $15 million to lose to Marjorie Taylor Greene, people say, yeah, but we want a 50-state strategy. It's like, okay, spend $50,000, $100,000, $500,000 to try to beat Marjorie Taylor Greene, because it's going to be the same result over and over. But when you're not spending the rest of the money in the rest of Georgia, and you're not contesting the rest of Georgia, and you're just driving up her voters, which there are a lot of them in that district, you're probably hurting things. The 50-state strategy is a spending everywhere strategy. It's not something we can do in September of an election year, but it's something that runs for something, really has been working on for since, everything. If you look at almost every organization started in 2017, because that's kind of when we all woke up. But Run for Something has really elected, I think the numbers are incredible, but they've also done a lot of research on, it's about almost 700 people is what I was going to say, since 2021. I don't think that even includes 2022. But what they do doesn't just win races and doesn't just build the Democratic brand. It doesn't just build the Democratic bench. It sends votes up the ticket. There's a study of Georgia, and there's a belief that these stronger candidates on the ballot, obviously working in places that they haven't worked for, have an incredible effect and send votes up, which is something that people didn't think happened before. So this is my kind of theory. What if news junkies become democracy junkies? That's where I'm kind of a different. I was a columnist for a long time. I was a social media guy for a long time. And what I want to do now is kind of the mix of journalism and activism. I want to cover activism like it's with the kind of journalistic bent that the races get covered, how the processes and how things are built, how the solutions happen. And these are the solutions I've been researching, and these are the best ideas I've come up from. I love to throw them out and be wrong, because I would love for someone to tell me better ideas, because I just want to know what is the best way to direct people to spend money. Just so I don't, if I see someone sending someone to try to beat Marjorie Taylor Greene, I can at least send a link and say, no, how about this? Well, maybe you should consider this. Today, I'm mostly talking about money, and I apologize to anyone who doesn't have money to spend. I'm basically unemployed. I get that. But it's not just about money, but money is something that some people only have money to give. And if you're interested in volunteering and sharing stories and spreading ideas at earlyworm with no A and no O, you can find we put volunteer ideas up all the time. So it's not just about money. It's not just about, it's also about sharing good information, sharing I need to get on this myself. Vice President Harris gave a speech yesterday about abortion rights that is historic in its both tone, messaging, and urgency. And that's the kind of thing that if we spread that and we're talking about that, then we're not talking about these horrible lies about immigrants in Springfield. I think that's a very important part of this whole is what earlyworms do. These people that I believe that can change democracy, news junkies do, is they set the tone for what everybody's talking about or how they're talking about it. And it may be just be for a few people, for some of us, but you never know who sees what you put out there when you start sharing it wildly on the internet. Things can happen. You don't know. And that's why influencing and taking responsibility for spreading good ideas, I think, is really important for anyone who, when you guys are out there at these events and they see Democrats, I mean, you guys get it. It's not just about the people you sign up that day. It's about the people who start thinking about it and maybe go home and sign up. Starting these conversations, thinking about taking responsibility for our social media, where we're starting conversations and where we direct them has a big power or can change a lot of people's minds. It really can. Talking a little bit about Run for Something, because I think they're the foundation of this reverse down ballot, this kind of down ballot view of democracy, and they've elected 637 to 2021. And they also do a couple other programs. If you only have one donation to give this year, I would say give a little money to Run for Something, because what they're doing, nobody else does. It just didn't exist in the Democratic Party before. There was this whole infrastructure of Republicans. They create think tanks, they create publications, they send kids to these young adult camps. They're creating a whole other generation of Republicans, and they make being a Republican a job or make it an option. Run Something makes democracy something that you can pursue as a passion, whether it's going to be your full-time job or your part-time job. And it's become increasingly important over the last few years because of things like Moms for Liberty, having the school board strategy that came from Steve Bannon. Most everything in the Republican Party has to come from the top down, and everything from the Democratic Party has to go from the top up. I mean, bottom up. It's the only way thing changes in politics. There's 50 state school board strategies, an attempt to counteract what the Moms for Liberty were doing, where they were sneaking into races, winning power, surprising everybody, and banning books out of nowhere, something that nobody wanted. Run for Something wins against, I forget the statistic, I think it was 2 out of 3 times. They beat Moms for Liberty over and over in different spots. They find these young progressives. They only endorse, I'm too old, they only endorse people who are in their third, I think 40, maybe the limit, I think 35, but young progressives, diverse kind of candidates that reflect the party, and running them everywhere. And this is in Alaska, this is in Hawaii, this is in Idaho, this is in Michigan, this is in Pennsylvania, it's in Philadelphia. A lot of the candidates that we're seeing coming out of every level of politics have been Run for Something alumni. Constant Good News, if you follow her Substack, the Run for Something feel good updates, you want to stay positive. Stress, one way to deal with stress, I know you guys are talking about that, is to read good news and to see this good news on a local level. It's always coming out of the Run for Something. And the clerk work program in Michigan, you guys know this. If you know Barb Byram, great follow on Twitter, is talking about this all the time. Our clerks are under assault, and they need to know that there's someone, if they have to step up because of the pressure, that there's someone behind them. We can't put people in this position where their democracy is on the back of one individual. Clerk work is taking that seriously, trying to run good clerk candidates everywhere in the nation. And it's an incredible program. And this is the closest thing Democrats have to a 50-state solution. Everything else I'm talking about now, with the exception of the one group at the end, is a targeted group. And if it weren't September, I wouldn't be talking about targeted groups as much. But now, as we focus, when it comes to targeting, the group that has made this into an art form is the States Project. There's
Jason,
yeah.
Pardon me. I'm terribly sorry to interrupt. Can you check the waiting room, please? I think there might be a couple people waiting, and I'd like them to see the rest of your presentation.
Excellent. Okay.
Sorry, folks, because of the link switch, it was a little wild. All right, I will mute and let you get back to it.
And I'll keep in mind, if I see any more, I will let them in.
Thank you.
So there's the testimony for the States Project from Governor Whitmer. It was founded in 2017 again. And one of the first places, it was kind of it's trying to fix red map is what I see it as. And they've been in the states where red map has been. And if you look at the map and a few others, and they've been in Michigan since 2018, they won a few seats that time around. And then they chip away. That's the strategy here, is to not let any year go where there's not progress made. At least maybe you don't flip it this time every time, but you keep the progress and you keep it close in the states that matter the most. And they have an amazing project where, kind of like a group like yours, you guys are probably doing enough, but for people who are looking to do more, if you want to give them a giving circle, is something you can either start or join. These are people who choose a state, and as a social kind of collective, raise money. I'm a fan of several of these groups because I see them at the top level. They make it fun, and they're trying to flip every one of the states that the states project is in, and they do it by, just acting like a Tupperware group, a Tupperware party for democracy, I would call it. And what happens here is then you take the money and you raise it for the state, and then state's project does the targeting. Now that's really important because they target right up to the end. They're spending in the spots that really matter the most. And they're making sure that everybody's contesting because they're trying to chip away at every margin and make Republicans work everywhere. But they're going to try to do two things: make sure that the candidates have the best chance of winning, have the most money at the end, and they're going to try to get candidates off the phones, not making those calls I was talking about at the beginning, and knocking on doors, because that's how elections are actually won. And that's why the states project exists. And there's another option. So if you don't want to join if you don't want to join one of these giving circles, or and you just want to know if you just want to know what the most targeted races are and who you should be looking at, this is who we should be looking at in Michigan. If you happen to see a rep that you think is worth your support, you can give it to them directly. These are the races that they're looking at that are going to decide whether we keep the trifecta or not. If you go to the States Project GiveSmart, they have the Michigan list there. They have all these lists there. It's linked in this presentation. I share this. If you go to the Earlyworm Society, you'll see. You can go see the presentation and click on all these links. And right now they're targeting Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. And Wisconsin, as you know, is an incredible opportunity this year. There's an actual chance to flip the assembly for the first time in more than a decade. Wisconsin and Michigan have had very similar storylines. North Carolina, there's a chance to break a supermajority. And there's actually really a chance to do a lot of progress towards actually winning back some serious power in North Carolina, because it's a 50-50 state that's been gerrymandered into a supermajority. And there's a big reason why that happens, and we'll talk about it at the end. Nevada, where there is a Democratic trifecta, they're defending it. We're defending it in Michigan. And Arizona is where I focused a bunch of my attention. I kind of saw it as the sister of Michigan, where we have a chance to gift them with what we've won in the state. It seems familiar what's going on there. This is where everywhere the state project is focused on this year. The one surprising, maybe New Hampshire's a little surprising. It's not really a swing state, but there is a chance to pick up the House there. And if you know anything about New Hampshire, you know that House is giant, and winning there is really, a matter of effort. It's really about politicking. Money makes a difference, but it isn't the only thing there. And in Kansas, there's a Democratic governor. It's about making sure that they do not get a supermajority to make that governor's life miserable the way that the governor of Kentucky is right now. I've been focused myself, so I'm kind of riding this line of being an activist and journalist. I've been raising money for Michigan to preserve the trifecta, and my other big passion has been raising money. That's what I started on first, was flipping Arizona, because 2 seats each house, that's all it takes, and you have a new trifecta. This is a state that was red forever, and there's a chance, and that you're also helping elect Ruben Gallego, who looks pretty good for the Senate, and then you're also have 11 electoral votes going with that. It's just win, 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 win. Another huge thing about Arizona, though I hate to make this messaging because I want people to think the opposite, but it's literally on the ballot in Arizona. I want everyone to think all the time that it's always on the ballot everywhere, because it's really true. Abortion rights is always on every ballot now. But in Arizona, they have a 15-week ban. And they also have a Supreme Court that tried to bring back an 1867 ban, and a bunch of Republicans, if they got into power, would bring back that ban. So it's trying to write it into law. Why? And of course, Arizona is one of these states where, like Florida, where they're trying to get rid of ballot proposals because they see that that's in Mississippi, there was supposed to be a ballot proposal on to end to bring Medicaid back, and the Supreme Court realized that that was very bad news for them if the people of Mississippi start to realize that democracy could work there, and they just invented a reason to keep it off the ballot. It's on the ballot. Abortion rights is on the ballot in Arizona. It's a really incredible opportunity, and that's why I spent a lot of time working on it. And and then it ties back into the Movement Voter Project, that's the Movement Voter PAC, but that's what I'm help raising money for. But the Movement Voter Project is an incredible organization that I just learned about in the last few weeks. And this is why I love doing research, because the people that I trust this organization. And one of the founders is actually a hero of mine, wrote a book that I loved in the 90s, William Wimsatt. He goes by Billy Wimsatt. These are incredible people, and they've come up with this idea. And the good thing is why you could be a new group and have a ton of change happen is they decided they're not going to do this themselves. They're going to be a mutual fund that funds organizers in every key, there are actually more than 10 states, I'm sorry, and they fund these organizations who are in the area, they have the connections, they have the relationships, they have the neural pathways, and then give them money to create more neural pathways so democracy actually can work. I included this example of how it's working in our state. There's the Take Back Our Power initiative that's about a specific piece of legislation that would ban donations from monopolies like DTE. So it's really organizing around a very local. If you're in the Southeast, if you're in Southeast Michigan, you have strong feelings about DTE that might get you involved in politics in a way that you may not care about any other issue. And they fund the activists who then go out, who get people elected. They know the issue, and then they have these relationships to even bring in people that they've been working with to grow their own network, so that when you actually have the time to really turn everybody out, as many people as possible, and they have the ability to activate people very, very quickly. And we've been raising money for them recently too. The way I found out about the Movement Voter Project was for this Bat Signal, the Bat Signal 4. This was a Substack post. It's also on their website if you search Movement Voter Project and want to read. It's an incredible assessment of what we're looking at as we look at the race in 2024. I think that this isn't hard to imagine, but it helps for me when someone explains it in exact terms. The three real options we're facing here. I would say that for me, if I look at this and I'm being very optimistic, I say A is 2016, B is 2020, even though it was quite good with winning the Senate, which was a real fluke there at the end. And then C, ideally, will be 2024. That's what we could win this year. And this is a matter of percentage points between 1 and 4 are really going to switch up, decide whether it's, Donald Trump is our leader forever, or we always have a leader named Trump, or we can have a blue wave, depending about 1 to 3, 4, 5%, depending on where it is. And so I'm talking about how Democrats are really good at funding the top of the ticket. And we figured out how to use donations online to fund our campaigns, to buy more ads and use ads to get more donations. And it's a virtuous circle, but it also, has really paid off for Vice President Harris. She's fully funded in a way that no campaign could have ever been in any other time in history. And she sent more money down ballot than any other candidate in history. And it's still nothing compared to what is really needed for this last part of it. It's the ground game. This is what competes with Republicans' pre-existing ground game, and that is mega churches, that is gun clubs, that is Fox News. This is every bar that chose Fox News. This is even labor unions, the actual workers, turn into MAGA fan clubs, and they turn each other out to vote. There's a lot going on in labor to change that, but that's happened. That was one of the things that happened in 2016 that surprised people. But these groups that fight this, and they do it in a systematic way. Republicans it's much more kind of all hidden, because that's why you can't explicitly make a church a voter turnout. Expect that to happen if Democrats win 2024 time, especially by using this model. Expect churches to literally look more like just voter outreach groups, because that's what they ultimately are. But it's a 4-step process, and you have to have the relationships, and only local groups can do that. And Democrats have that on a certain level, but it's these bare bones organizers like you, and people who commit themselves to do this, and they're mostly in their spare time, are for minimal amount of money. Even if it's your career, it's a calling and it's a passion, because it's not, extremely lucrative, and it's extremely stressful to do this kind of work. because you're dealing with people who have extreme needs often. So I'm going to talk about one more organization that I'm really proud of, just because it's a fellow Michigan guy, Charles Gaba, who became famous when he kind of was a big tracker for the ACA and Obamacare. When there was all this doubt about whether anyone signed up, Charles was someone who put the numbers out there, helped make the case for that, and he has the neural pathways to talk about that. Again, all these relationships, bunch of followers, reliable websites, trusted by a bunch of people, and he just put up his own site and started raising his own money. Already raised almost $10 million. And this is comparing it to last time around, where he was in the 2020 election. It was about $2 million. And that changed dramatically for him when, unfortunately, Justice Ginsburg passed away. And then he raised him another 4 or 5 million in just a couple of months, to talk about how fast things can happen, which is the reason I talk about these things is, you never know who could hear about the Movement Voter Project and decide to make a real difference. Like Mandy Patinkin got on and did a thread for them, and that was really exciting for them, to have someone talk about this project, when in reality, you had Meryl Streep during the Oprah Zoom the other day. States Project pointed out that she said, don't sleep on state legislatures. You think that this is for us who are early worms, for us who are news junkies, we're like, yeah, we've been focused on winning the House back. And this, of course, we think about gerrymandering. Now, why else did we get rid of gerrymandering? But for a lot of people, like especially if you're in a blue state where you don't even really, California, these state legislative races they're box checking often. You don't think about these in these blue states. And then in red states, it hasn't even been a thought in their mind. And, it's really, the education has come from us in Pennsylvania and us in Arizona and us now in Wisconsin, having to recognize how much this could really affect our lives. And Charles has made that focus to go ballot more. But you can see what people are interested in just by this, because this is Charles over and over again telling everybody, go down ballot. And they're like, sure. Yeah. We want to win the Senate. We want to win this. And, to a degree, maybe they're right. And that's the right way to spend the money, but I don't think they are. One other down ballot issue I really hope everyone pays a close attention to this time around is this state Supreme Court, something in Michigan we have intimate knowledge with. We know how important it is to I guess I don't know if reelect is the right word for Bolden, but so that Bolden and Thomas win this time around. They're the only two kind of statewide Democrats who aren't on the all of the above Democratic ticket. So you have to select them. You have to choose Bolden and Thomas. You have to make sure everybody who votes in Michigan knows that they have to vote for Bolden and Thomas independently. The whole Michigan model doesn't work if we have the Supreme Court that we did 5-6 years ago. It just doesn't work, because there was all these different barriers that you forget. You didn't hear about them because we didn't have to worry about them, because we had a good Supreme Court that wasn't purposely delaying things or doing things like in Ohio, where they know how popular ending gerrymandering is. And they took an ending gerrymandering proposition. This I think it's called question 1, and says that it brings it enforces gerrymandering. They recognize the only way you can defeat these things is to lie about it. And it still probably won't be enough, because the most popular thing you can put on the ballot is ending gerrymandering. Voting rights is the second most popular thing. Marijuana and abortion rights, extraordinarily popular, less popular than voting rights and gerrymandering. People just hate the idea that they can't pick their own leader. It's why the pro-democracy messaging, people poo it all the time. You say to someone, they want to take away your vote, it becomes a much more personal thing. That's what I'm doing. That's all I'm doing here. My single issue is that I care about voting. It becomes a really important thing to do, to make sure that to defeat these. We have a bunch of them in Michigan. We have a bunch of, the right word for it is hard to describe. I call them insurrectionists. People call them election deniers, people who just don't want your vote to count. And those people are, when they get on the state Supreme Court, you get a situation like you had in Wisconsin forever. You get a situation like we have now in North Carolina, winning, I think, is it Riggs or Briggs? I'm going to, but it rhymes with either Riggs or Briggs in North Carolina. Her election is extraordinarily important to breaking that supermajority, where you've had a Democratic governor who hasn't basically been able to govern because they have a state Supreme Court and a supermajority that decided that the people don't know best about this. There's also on this list is a Supreme Court justice in Texas. I love this list. And Charles actually added the next 2025's Wisconsin Supreme Court race, because that's how important it is to maintaining that power. So this is You know, that $84,000 means a lot in these races. If you want to know where you could really feel your power, it's giving to state Supreme Courts or even focusing on them, just letting people know that Bolden and Thomas, you actually have to put their name in. Those incredible important actions. This is one of the small ones. And this is the kind of thing that, you know, that only early worms and news junkies really focus on. I don't see the time here, so I hope that I'm not going over. I hope that the
You're
two other
good.
organizations, what time is it out of here?
You are 42 past the hour. You're fine.
Okay. Okay, I should wrap up right here. I'm almost done. So Every State Blue and Ground Game Texas are two excellent organizations to consider. Every State Blue is in Ohio, Tennessee, and Missouri. Eventually they want to get in every state. It's just the basic idea is you give everybody enough to put up lawn signs and you run a Democrat in every single race in every state. And it's just at the beginning idea here. I think it's kind of, there was a bunch of ideas that came out of 2017. I think there's a bunch of ideas that came out 2023 where people were starting to see how state powers won and they want to do it. Ground Game Texas came about 5 or 6 years ago. They use ballot propositions to turn out the unlikely voters to try to win power back in Texas, where Texas is trending Democrat faster than Minnesota ever will trend Republican. So it's a good place to look at it. It's behind Arizona, it's behind Georgia, but it's not that far behind. If you just get this out of this, then I did a good job. This is a new tool that Washington Dems put out. They asked me to start promoting to people. mivoter.org. This is for Michigan voters. This is who the Democrats endorse. If you are wondering who to vote for, which we all do often when we're filling out these ballots, this is a huge resource. And I imagine if anyone abroad who votes in Michigan, I would imagine this would be a bit of a godsend because you haven't had a time to look that far down ballot. It's a new thing. So this is kind of showing how the people who really care, and we have a great party organization in Washtenaw that has turned out turned out a lot of Democrats for Clinton, but a lot more for Biden. And this time they'll turn out way more for Harris. They just know how to do it, and they don't want another 2016. We're all living in constant fear of that. So what have we learned in review? The two things I thought I learned when I worked in a campaign is that demographics are unavoidable and asking for money sucks. I was completely wrong about. They maybe were true in 1994 when I was 19 and didn't know anything. But now, because of the internet, because of online fundraising, because of social media, we can overcome these things. It takes determination. It takes a focusing on every election down ballot. And it takes a lot of people, you know, being strategic, but also thinking of donations to politics as investments. So I'm going to invest in democracy. Something like the Movement Voter Project, when I interviewed Zoe Toby, who was the communications director, he said, worst case scenario, we lose. Who is going to do the fighting? It's going to be the organizers in every state. They're the people who are going to keep democracy alive against every threat that exists. That's worst case scenario. Best case scenario, who's going to make sure policy happens? And the people who turned out, we actually promised them something. Who's going to make sure they actually get it? It's those same organizers. That's the neural pathway that exists in the Republican Party that just doesn't exist in our party. We have to build it and invest in it. And asking people for money or giving people opportunities was something Melissa Walker from the States Project, really burned in my head. You're not asking people for money. You're giving them an opportunity to do something. It's not money. You're not giving it to me. And you know, my life isn't changed that much if you do or don't. I love it when you do because it makes me feel like we're working together and doing something. But I'm just giving you an opportunity and asking and letting you know where you could give. And to me, that's a huge benefit. I wish I get to everyone who gave to Marjorie Taylor Greene and say, hey, here's what you could have done. They may not have made that choice. They still might have said, I want to stick it to Marjorie Taylor Greene because that's the most fun thing you can do. But they may not have. And I think when people have better information, they do better. And I think I love giving people the opportunities to do better. And if you know better opportunities, I would love to hear them. And I should give you back control, right?
Yeah, thank you very much. That was extremely enlightening. I'd like to open the chat up for questions. I have a couple of questions already kind of planned to get us started. So you can think about it for a minute and then put your questions in the chat along with, or you can just type * hand up. I will put that in there now so you can see how it should look because it helps us keep the order a little bit better than the hand up tool within Zoom itself. So just type * hand up in the chat if you have a question. Cliff will be keeping the queue order, and I will start with a couple of questions that I have. Now, Jason, given the content in your slides, I think I already know the answer to this, but regarding down ballot voting, can you recommend one particular office, kind of regardless of state, that doesn't receive as much public attention as it should at election times, the one that has the most impact on day-to-day life?
Yeah, I talked Supreme Court, and I would say that'd probably be the first one. But I would say second, these school board races, especially if in a lot of places in Michigan, they've been extraordinarily contested, and a lot of damage can be done in a short amount of time. Because when you have kids going to school, they only go to school for that time period. You get a bunch of people who don't really actually care about education and are there to make some strange political point running your schools. It's a bit of a nightmare, and it drives good teachers away is the biggest fear that I have. So I think that's extraordinarily important, and that takes the most kind of research. So I admire anyone who kind of really puts the effort into that. And then I would say that your county clerk, of course, really matters. And if hopefully you're lucky and you're in a good county and you don't have to worry about that. But if you're not, it.
Yeah, no joke with the county clerk. Everyone doing voter assistance and in contact with local election offices is learning that in very real time if they didn't already know.
That'd be really interesting
Okay,
to know. I'd love to know more about that. How they had they been very indifferent. That'd be really interesting. Yeah.
oh boy, maybe we need to have a voter assistant decompression hour, a happy hour or something. You'd hear some stories. Okay, I see a couple of questions in the chat. I'd like to go ahead and go to those first. The first one is from Max. Max, unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
Hello. First, I'd like to start with just a comment. I really appreciate the fantastic organizations you highlighted. But I will make the pitch that we are like an order of magnitude less funded than they are. So for instance, here in France, we have 12,000 study abroad students in very concentrated campuses. You can plop a table down and get 50 people to not just register, but actually vote a write-in backup ballot in a matter of a few hours. But we've never had any sort of paid field organizers, let alone just basic organizer training. So we are a bit of a mess here. Something like 5.8% of the 183,000 US citizens of voting age in France voted in 2020, and the numbers are pretty similar in other states. So I'll first just make that comment. I have sort of a side question for someone media savvy, which is, so what if you have an issue that is not particularly salient to the election, like it won't poll test well, so no candidate will talk about it. In my case, this is hurricane forecasting. It's not on top of people's minds per se, but the US Senate election in Texas is determining who will hold the gavel of the commerce oversight, including oversight of NOAA and NASA. And Ted Cruz has repeatedly attacked the funding for the whole Earth Sciences program, including the satellite that's used to determine where's the center of a disorganized hurricane. And I think people might know it, or might care about this, but I have no idea how to get the word out of something like that.
Yeah, that's great. So ultimately, in social media world and in the time we live in now, everything is a pitch to a reporter. So if it's a social media post, if it's a thread, if it's you asking a question here, I would like to write 2 stories based on what we just heard from you, Max. I think those are things that aren't covered. It's the kind of thing, that's the kind of thing that I want to cover that I don't think is covered as much in the news media. There isn't, it's a tough kind of thing because the crossing the line of activism, you're kind of advocating if you're telling that story. The Democrats are underfunded here. And I think newspapers get that. That's why, I love to have the freedom to be able to cover that from both those angles are extraordinarily strong stories for me to tell to my audience. My audience is, of course, not as huge as it was when I was at USA Today. But, you never know when you bleed up to, someone sees my story that comes up to alternate, it goes up to New Republic, it goes up to, they start covering it. So the 2 ways I would say to do this is one is you present the information as best as you possibly can on your own. So you do a thread, you do a post. You share it, then you try to find people who have a slightly bigger platform. So this is kind of like, we're basically doing this right now because if I hope you'll get my email address from Sarah and follow up with me because I would like to write 2 stories based on what we just talked about because those are hugely undercover stories. You present it the best way you can, find someone with a platform who's slightly bigger, try to present it to them. mix, as they say, rinse, repeat. That's basically the strategy when you don't have a platform whatsoever. Is the real advantage is when you can present information as well as you just did. Someone's going to hear it and they may cover it, or they just might say, they may just share it, but they may end up covering it.
Great, thank you very much. And thanks, Max. I'm really glad somebody else is interested in the NOAA situation, because I thought I was alone in that.
I don't
It's
think
good
you
to
are.
hear.
I would say this would be blue sky bait, because it's kind of a mix of
You'd think.
scientists and early politicians and progressives, and it's
And
a perfect story. And I'll tell you this: there was two things that would happen. In 2016, I got caught up in if you ever see the coverage of the different troll rooms and everything like that. There was that guy Ricky Vaughn, Douglas Mackey, who ended up getting he's now serving time because he sent out bad memes to tell people to vote at the wrong time. So there's all these trolls, and it turned to, the kind of fine line between who were Russian trolls, and it didn't really matter because it was all so similar. I started to, diss, I would guess would be the year's Ted Cruz. And all of a sudden I realized every Russian troll in the world is backing me up, because they were all for Trump and they were all on the side of Ted Cruz. But what they realized is when you shared material about why Ted Cruz sucks, everybody loves it. It is clickbait. And I don't know why we haven't seen more of it around. Just probably, I think because Trump has displaced him as being kind of detestable. But in his own way, the people who like Trump still secretly detest Ted Cruz. So I think we could do something with that.
yeah, I think when Trump is off the top of the ticket and attracting all of the repellent energy, then we'll figure out just how horrifying everyone else
No,
is.
I think we could do it with this story. I think this story would get some attention. I definitely hope that we can get it together and put something out there within a week, because people need to know about that.
That would be super cool. Just one side note before we go to the next question, there is an episode of a TV show that Adam Conover did on Netflix called The G Word that specifically references the NOAA situation. So it's worth checking out. I don't know if it's still on Netflix. Again, the name of that is The G Word. It was really good, really enlightening. It kind of radicalized me a little bit. And with that, I would like to
Can I throw back one more note on that? If you make Project 2025 is such a hot button issue, and it's the bread and butter of everyone on the left, what they're writing about. If you make that, I know that there's something about in Project 2025, you make that connection, Ted Cruz. So the more kind of buzzwords you connect it to, also the better the story. So if you write it up from that angle of, how Ted Cruz will go to all 2025 on Noah's ass or something like that, not that you would ever write it that way, but like that.
I might write it that way. I like that. Okay. And with that, thanks again, Max. The next question is from Joanne. Joanne, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Oh, hi. Joanne Milia, Michigan voter in Toronto, Ontario. I wanted to know that if you vote a straight Democratic ticket, are the down ballot races automatically voted Democratic, or do you need to vote each one of those individually?
Almost in every district in county, there are races that are going to be nonpartisan that aren't really nonpartisan. For instance, our city council for a long time was nonpartisan and wasn't really nonpartisan, and that you had we had a extremely conservative city council when I moved to Ann Arbor, which was one of the shocks. So that MI voter is that's the recommendations from the county committee based on their endorsements. They're usually very good. I'm saying that from a Washtenaw perspective where we're excellent. So if you trust your county committee, that's the recommendations that there are going to be in that mivoter.com or
Okay.
.org. .org. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right.
And they should have them all. There may be a few blanks there. I hope they have them all there. People are starting to tell it, and I'm sharing it. So, but if you do see something in there, I can pass it on to the people at Washtenaw Dems.
Great. Thank you so much.
Cool. Yeah, I figured that was probably only a partial that I saw, because I checked it out when you put it on Blue Sky earlier.
Oh, cool.
And with that, Brian is next. Brian, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Jason. So I'm a Michigan voter in Germany, and I had kind of a policy question about education reforms in Michigan. I was watching an online forum for candidates for the school board in my hometown over the weekend, and there were some references to funding cuts for student mental health and I don't know things, but these were coming from Moms for Liberty adjacent candidates. So maybe could, not a lot of detail, but if you could just say something more about education and
Sure.
education policy right now.
Yeah, there's a real opportunity for Moms for Liberty because even in places like Ann Arbor and Washington, there are big budget cuts happening. And that's not so much because that's coming from the top level. You know, there's actually been a lot of money coming from the top level considerably or comparably over the last 3 or 4 years. This is because of COVID, numbers going down, you know this. So so it looks like someone is mismanaged when in reality the numbers are lower just about everywhere. Because people are going to private school, people are going homeschool. So the Moms for Liberty, if you have one Moms for Liberty candidate in your area, you probably have 2 or 3, and you probably you've been targeted. These are places they're not running in Ann Arbor. They're not running in, I don't even think Livonia or Novi. They are running in places where they think they can win. So that's the most I can tell about. I hope that answers your question as much, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. I mean, this is in Grosse Pointe.
Yeah. So they may choose that because they recognize that they have a kind of MAGA kind of class thing going on. Yeah. But yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Great.
But I also hesitate to talk about that. I hope I didn't get into, because I don't know the local dynamics. There's always like good or bad people in the area, and there's good or bad candidates. I don't want to be just like
there were some bad people who got elected in 2022 there. So
Yeah.
that's part of the problem.
Yeah. And because I mean, the thing to keep in mind is that turnout is, even though the Republicans got ruined here in 2022, their turnout was massive. They actually, you know, I think Tudor Dixon got a comparable amount of votes that the Rick Snyder got. If you actually kind of, if I do the math on that right, turnout was just extraordinarily high. So Republicans did quite well, and where there were a lot of Republicans.
And just on the issue of school boards, it's such a issue that's near and dear to people in many communities, but in that one in particular, and I think in 2022, the issue was also there were a lot of good people running, too many candidates for the school board actually who were good candidates, and a couple of bad candidates won, and that because all the other votes got split. And so I was encouraged to see that there are fewer candidates this time. So, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Brian. I think the last person in the queue is David. Dave, go ahead. Oh, never mind. We got one from Cliff too. So Dave, go ahead, and then Cliff.
Okay, thank you so much, Jason, for joining us, and Sarah for putting this together. This is great. Listen, it's a lot of information for me. I don't know about everybody else. I just want to, excuse me if I'm being redundant here, but I'm
Sure.
just asking for, again, our guides. We talked about this before in this group, how we can go through having our guides. And if I understand correctly, mivoter.org is the repository for that information for us.
Okay, so just so you know, mivoter.org is something my local county committee, Washington Dems, put together. They're trying to, for the first time, so this is going to be incomplete. I think Sarah was mentioning it was incomplete for her. There, depending on where you live, you'll have all the endorsements for your county committee. And depending on how many people your county committee endorsed, you'll have, they may have missed, you never know what's going on with local politics. They may not have everything in there. So this is I would say that Sarah, you have some kind of look at it, and I don't want to, as someone who's done this kind of voting, I don't want to give people any, I think you probably would have a better answer for that than I do.
Yeah, just a brief overview, Dave, of what I looked at. I put in my zip code, or I gave my street address rather. It gave me back what would be kind of on my sample ballot, all of the endorsements that have been made at this point. And because I vote in Oakland, I know I have a longer ballot than the number of candidates that it returned me. So I figure it's probably just a matter of the fact that for us abroad, even in Canada, November is now. we have received our ballots, we're ready to go. If we can wait a little bit longer to send our ballots back, there might be more endorsements that come in, but it's also a good idea to cross-reference your endorsements and your sample ballots to kind of have a more global picture of everything, because this MI voter thing, excellent. Now I know what the endorsements are. It clears up a few things for me, but I'm still using Ballotpedia's full sample ballot, so I have the full picture. I'm still using vote411.org in order to kind of get a more party-centric picture. As usual, with Democrats Abroad things, it's not about what you've memorized, it's about what you can reference. And we have the reference materials. It's just a matter of sitting down, kind of thinking logically about it and going through all of the reference materials and then kind of coming to a conclusion that's been informed by all of those.
Okay, great. Just a quick follow-up. My point is to try to help my fellow voters have 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, a short list of resources that they can go to without having to go. I don't know, I guess it's Votopedia or something, or where you can go kind of, Ballotopedia, where you can go one at a time. I'm just trying to find ways we can streamline it for folks who only have so much bandwidth.
Sarah, can I jump in?
Please, Jennifer, go ahead.
We've got a couple of good resources, and I'll put our state-specific resource guide up, and it's got other things as far as returning your ballot. But at the bottom, we have 2 people we partner with, is Blue Voter Guide and ActiVote. ActiVote is nonpartisan, but the nice thing that they do is they ask you questions about particular issues, and then you can see where you are in contrast to particular candidates. And this is especially helpful for nonpartisan races, such as school boards. So you can see, all right, they answered questions, even if it's not necessarily education questions that you answer, you can pretty much see where you are in relation to, someone from Moms for Liberty is going to answer questions about abortion very differently than we would. So those are both great resources. And Sarah just popped a link to the state-specific voting resources in. There's also Michigan stuff in there too. And if you're out doing any kind of tabling, I would suggest have this on your phone, just because there's so much good stuff about getting ballots back to states like Texas and Pennsylvania, where we know that it's tricky and we have a lot of issues. So please, please, please share those widely. And at the bottom, ActiVote is on there and the Blue Voter Guide. And those will both kind of look like a ballot, so people can just go through and see exactly what's going to be on their ballot and who's been endorsed. And they're really great resources.
Totally amazing. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jennifer. That's a wonderful resource, folks. If you haven't checked that one out yet, then
can you
add
scroll
that to
down
your...
on that, Sarah, and show them the links to the ActiVote and Blue Voter Guide? It's on the very bottom of the page.
Oh, I think Jason's on top of it for us. Oh, wait, there we go. The very top of the page. Yeah, because I'm not the host right now. So
I can either give you the host back, or which
I can reclaim
ActiVoter?
it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Please.
You're good. Yeah. Okay. While I am looking to pull that up, we can go to the next question in the queue, who is Cliff. Cliff, go ahead, please.
Thanks. Jason, great to have you. Longtime follower of yours. My question is inspired by Brian's question about having too many good candidates to choose from and how that backfired. Do we have any hope, and do we have to take any concrete steps towards ranked choice voting or something other than first past the post in down ballot races? I think that that's the future of the electoral process in the United States writ large, as long as enough people express an interest in it and vote for candidates who support it. Is there any strategy that we can follow at the local level to advance in that direction? Thanks.
Yeah, I wish I had a better answer for this. I can tell you that the trend toward it is, if it starts in California, it's where it's headed. That's not necessarily ranked choice, but open primaries is kind of the first step there. It's kind of the gateway drug to ranked choice. I think people are kind of getting to the point where there's, especially in blue areas, they're sick of having, the same, only one choice and only one election. They would like at least two slices at it. And ranked choice does that. I can tell you, I was up in Lansing yesterday. So there's it's on the ballot there. So I know that it's on the march in Michigan. I don't know enough about it. It's not my big issue. But I will look more into it, because I I see that, you know, there's very few things that make every election matter more and more. And ranked choice is definitely one of those things that does. And so anything that makes an election about democracy and not just about somebody being told, you know, who to vote for by who has the most money, I think I'm all for.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Cliff. The next question is from Matt. Matt, go ahead and unmute.
Thanks. I just used your resource to see what it looked like where I'm voting. And I wondered, because I didn't see it on there. And first of all, thank you for the Supreme Court recommendations. That's excellent. But my question is, what about further down the ballot when it comes to judges? Do you know any resources? I mean, I can see here that where I'm voting from, they're uncontested basically, so it doesn't really make a difference. But I'm sure there's some places in other parts, especially in the metro area, where they are contested, and that's always been a mystery to me how people can vote for judges at that level. But are there things to help people figure out who's who?
That really, unfortunately, you know, you've heard the one resource that really has some good details on this Ballotpedia, and even in Ann Arbor, if have a question about the judges, I'm Googling down into Google News, and I'm having to go, you know, the multiple steps you're having to go. I'm having to go to Google News most recent stories, because often they're, you know, to even find someone who's written about it, because it's a two things going on. It's one is that, you know, is we don't know the candidates, and the second one, there's no journalism left to really explain these candidates to us in most Michigan cities, and there's one conglomerate that owns and has one stringer that they're sending out to do, you know, so you know the situation. I wish I had a better answer for you, but it's just the only thing is what I do, which is go into Google News and sometimes the most recent news result.
That's actually a really good answer. Thanks.
All right, and the last question in the queue right now is from Anne Marie. Just FYI, Anne Marie and Jason, it is 9 past the hour right now. So Jason, I don't know how much time you have. I just want you to be aware of the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. This has been so fabulous, and I have learned of so many resources that I hadn't heard of before. So I really am grateful. And just to add to the last topic, I called the school board on Friday because I could not find any information. And they told me, oh, someone's just putting that together right now, and that's going to be on our website. So going to the administration's websites, hopefully they would have that. And what I did, because I wanted to finish up my ballot, I went on Facebook and I went to the candidates' Facebook pages, and you can actually find out quite a bit about the person from looking on their Facebook.
Yep.
So I was glad that was pretty clear, but I so agree with all the judicial and everything is tricky, and I'm grateful to be able to use these resources that we'll be able to put on our website. We'll put this recording, but as well as just the links to everything so people can easily get that. And I was wondering, is there a group that's tracking the Moms for Liberty? It would be really great to have even a little article to put out there for people to kind of be able to look up right away if there's someone running in their area.
Yeah, that is a really good, I think that you might be able to, not that it was designed for this, the 50 state school board strategy for run for something. They may have a tool there. And if not, I will look. That is a really great idea. I mean,
that would be great. And it's like, just in another example, in Oregon, for the primaries, they had 66 people, members of the Bundy group, that whole shootout takeover thing that were running. And I'm trying to find who won their primaries. Just those types of things. And I'll look, and maybe this 50 state group would be following the Bundy group too, because I'm sure hoping that most of them lost their primary races, right?
Right.
So, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is what I see going on here. So there's that chart I showed you where there's there's three levels of politics. So we're focused on the first two, which is the the big news, the top of the ticket, the ads that kind of go. So we kind of have what's paid media and what's also kind of earned media. So that's all politics is to most people. But the reality of politics is who's running in our own district. Finding that out in an era where local journalism doesn't exist. I think these organizers, the Movement of Voter Project Fund, turning organizers into reporters is one idea that I kind of, like having people on the ground everywhere who are actually, when you go to these sites, they actually, someone funding that aspect of this. This is kind of my post 2025 of my wish statement of what I would like to work on, is to get people in every one of these organizations that they have one storyteller who's telling these stories, who's writing about this, and someone has an idea, like we have a Moms for like that's a huge place. You attract exactly the kind of people who are interested in politics. This database is amazing. You don't have to get everyone's name to know it, but you're bringing, there's all these kind of synergies that aren't happening because of journalism has died and there's nothing really stepped up to kind of replace it. So it's really fascinating. Can I ask you guys a couple questions? Can I use this as when do you need to really get your ballots done by to feel safe about it getting counted?
Today.
Yeah, safety is a weird term. Here's the thing. September 21st is the date by which every state in the United States has to have begun sending out their ballots to absentee voters overseas, like us and the folks in the military. The vast majority of them do that. A bunch of them this year actually were ahead of the deadline, which is amazing. When we receive them, it's up to us to then receive it, print it, vote it. If it's a postal return one, there are different return methods that will alter the timeline for everything. So you've got the folks who can return via email or an electronic portal. They can receive it, vote it, send it back same day. Easy peasy. And then you've got the postal return folks who have a bit of a longer timeline because you're at the mercy of at least two different postal systems. Then you've got the folks who have unreliable postal systems in their country who will frequently use the diplomatic pouch at an embassy. The timeline for the diplomatic pouch is generally 4 weeks between it being dropped at the embassy and arriving in the United States. That's not arriving at the local election office. That's it getting to the United States and being dumped into a post box at Dulles Airport. Then it enters the USPS and, good luck. We'll see what happens. So this is why we try to get people to vote their ballot the moment they lay their hands on it.
Okay. Yeah, this is an amazing story. I mean, like, it's an amazing democracy story that you all are putting this kind of effort in there, and that we are doing absolutely nothing to support you. When you consider one thing I didn't stress, that I didn't even stress when I was talking is, the trifecta in our state, in Michigan, exists because of 340 votes in one election that swung one way or another. I mean, these margins are minuscule. For some reason, it's 50-50 everywhere that counts. And the idea that this isn't that there's not a massive, top level outreach to voters who could really make a difference is a little wild to me.
Yeah, it's a bit surprising, and we're pretty aware that the number of absentee voters overseas and civilian and military in the 2020 election definitely covered the margin of victory at the top of the ticket in multiple states, in Georgia, in Arizona, probably not in Michigan because the margin was a little wider there. But we probably had a titanic effect on those down ballot races that are separated by 4 and sometimes 3 digits. Like we definitely have the numbers. We just have to get people to go through the process of voting, which has so many obstacles in it that it weeds out all but the hardest core. So yeah, it's a struggle, which is why when Max was talking about how underfunded we are for the value of the work that we do, it really kind of hits home. I do know that we had one other hand up before we started the questions.
And also,
now
can I ask one thought that, all these campaigns that get funded, all this money that gets wasted on campaigns, their campaigns they're born to die, but you guys are born to exist and persist. And that's why the investments are, I hope we start seeing that this is the next step of the down ballot thing, is these organizations that persist.
Yeah, I would love that because like we're just here living our lives and then we have to vote on some stuff that affects us. Brian has the next question and then one from Dave. I would say that should be the last call for questions. And after anything else that comes in after Brian's question, we're going to need to close the queue.
Okay, just on the clerks, I got my ballot on Friday. My son sent in his ballot request on Saturday, and within an hour on Saturday, he got it back. So they're working in Grosse Pointe Park. They're working on the weekend. But just one more thing on voter education. In some places, there still are old school organizations that are wonderful, like the League of Women Voters, that offer voter education, and that's how I watch my Board of Education candidate forum on YouTube. And I've done that for the last few election cycles, and so that can be a great resource. League of Women Voters. Also wonderful.
Yeah, League of Women Voters is like they're very legit. Keep an eye on them if you need voter information.
Except for it seems like they should fill those questionnaires out based on who's been winning mayor in New York City. Sounds like.
It's okay. New York notwithstanding.
Yeah.
Dave, I think it's you,
Oh.
and then the queue is closed.
Okay, great. Listen, I won't make this long. I just wanted to mention this, Jason. I'm in the running to be a paid organizer here in Southern Ontario. And that should be coming down very shortly. I wanted to mention too, we're talking about these razor thin margins. The city of Windsor, Ontario, is like 1/3 American citizens. And that means over 30,000 voters, potential voters, are in that one little town right across from Detroit. So we're focusing a lot of our attention there. And half of the Democrats Abroad chapter are Michigan voters. That's another thing. Not only are they a lot of Americans, but a concentration of Michigan voters. And then we also have Sarnia and then Sault Ste. Marie. But I'm just saying that in Southern Ontario, there is a massive number. If you go up to Toronto, I don't know, Joanne, how many you are in Toronto, but it's a phenomenal number total.
I don't know what the numbers are, but there's a large population of.
Yeah, just to say, we're probably like 100,000 in between Ontario and Quebec right here. And I'll just I just wanted to mention because it's really huge. When we're talking about a couple of voters, a handful of voters here or there, well, we've got tens of thousands, right over here that are potential voters. So I'm so glad we're doing this now.
That's a story idea right there. It's, the Canadians could swing the presidential election, or people living in Canada. I think that's a story I've not heard told before. So thanks for the idea.
For a story like we're going to try to have a massive door knock. For the first time ever, we'll be door knocking outside of the States. So with that ratio, our leader here wants to have us door knock, and it's a great idea.
When is that? When would that be?
That would probably be, well, I don't have a date for you, sorry, just yet, but it'll be in the next couple of weeks, because our deadline for the Michigan voters, the way we're seeing it, is the 3rd week of October. We don't have quite as much a barrier as other people do.
Right.
So we'll be looking maybe the 2nd week of October to have a great big event that could be newsworthy, that could, give people from Montreal who want to come down. I'm sure we could get some folks from elsewhere who want to come down and just have a whole big push in a couple of neighborhoods that we've picked.
Well, I'd love to cover that, to write about the first door knocking going on outside the United States. That's a great story. So any stories you have, Sarah has my email. Please feel free to pitch me. And, I don't have the platform I once had, but I have a platform and with a bunch of people who really care about democracy. So, that I'd love to write these up.
Thank you so much.
Great. And with that, the queue is closed. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. Jason, thank you so much for your time. if we can get some information together, details about this Windsor door knock, especially, I think we'll definitely reach out to you and let you know the details of it, because we don't get to canvass, because normally we don't have critical mass of people that we know that we can hit. So this is super exciting for us, getting to do a normal political thing instead of our weird end run political thing that we usually have to do. So yeah, again, thanks everybody. We've been on almost 90 minutes. I don't want to take up too much more of everyone's Sunday afternoon or morning if you're in the Americas. Anne-Marie, did you have anything you wanted to add before we end?
Just thank you all for being here today. Special thanks, of course, to Jason Sattler for being here and all this wonderful information. And Sarah, many thanks to you, your idea for bringing this. So very grateful. Oh, let's just do this. Thanks, everybody.
All right. 40-something days, y'all. Don't count. We'll sleep on
Right.
November 6th.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. This was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks for coming. Bye,
Bye.
folks.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
My phone somehow blacked out when they were recently talking about some of the initiatives in sort of in the Detroit Windsor corridor. Did he mention the signs that are being posted, the billboards at the tunnel and the bridge to get voters to register to vote? My understanding is that there are billboards.
Yes, we've had a bit of trouble with that. At one point, they were pulled for being political, but the big ones near the tunnel were pulled for being political. But they're
Really?
supposed to be going back up, and they're going to try to give us extra airtime to make up for our lost time. From what I understand, I've been going around trying to find them and haven't found one ad yet. But there are apparently some up in the smaller billboards in malls and stuff like that are still being circulating. But I haven't seen our report. That's with the state. The chair of Canada. Aaron gets those reports, I believe. So I don't know exactly where it stands, but I'm roving, trying to find them.
We should be able to get that list. We can ask Aaron and Steve Nardi for that.
Yes, I've been in touch with them.
Yeah.
Aaron told me that she told me directly that the nature of the problem we were having, and that she was waiting for word that the tunnel one would be back up. But I have all my little camping spots near them, and I camp out of it because they're electronic, so they're rolling. So I sit and watch for periods of time, and I haven't found them yet, but they're supposed to be there. And also, we're supposed to be adding 4 buses. So the buses will be 4 buses will be partially wrapped in our messaging.
And that's going to be at vote.org. Where are we driving into? What's the call to action?
Everything is votefromabroad.org. Everything has to be nonpartisan. And even at that, we got flagged for being political. I don't know how that happened or the mechanism of that, but yeah. So everything is the nonpartisan votefromabroad.org. We have a new kiosk. We have a bunch of new stuff coming up. So we should be moving here soon.
Okay,
even more.
Good
Awesome.
stuff.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Great meeting.
Thanks, folks.
All right.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thanks,
Have a great
everybody.
day.
Take care.
Hope to see some of you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm just